be planning for and looking forward for into, really into 2021. I mean, there are so many components and things that we have to be really obsessing over as we look to launching our businesses and kind of scaling up for next year. The ways in which we're starting to think about, how we are optimizing our budgets, of how we're kind of looking at marketing, kind of what the major components are for, developing those marketing channels. I can't tell you how often I hear from so many of you brands as we speak, both on the lives and one-on-one, just, how confusing marketing can really be. And so I want to take a few minutes to kind of start to look at what it is you should be thinking about for a marketing plan and strategy, and kind of how to start building that out in a very unique way. I had the privilege of speaking to a group of entrepreneurs the other day, and they were asking me about, well, how do you do positioning, right? How do you think about a marketing spend or a marketing budget? And what I think is so important is that it's not cookie cutter. Hey there, thanks for joining. It's not a cookie cutter kind of template. And why is that? Well, when we think about the ways in which our brands have to communicate, and we think about the ways in which we communicate into the world, it's all very different, right? I mean, you guys see here on Makers Row, every time there's a new speaker, we all have a different way of approaching things. And that, I think, is ultimately the beauty in life, is that there is no true competition, as we are all, individuals. We're all kind of speaking in ways and cadences and talking to an audience in particular ways. And one of my favorite things to say is that you may have oversaturated market, but there are also undersaturated voices. And I think that we need to be looking at marketing through a very similar lens, as we're thinking about your 2021 plans, how you have your budgets that you're looking at. So whether that is a $5,000 budget, or maybe you're looking at a $25,000 budget for the year, guys, you'd be surprised how fast it goes. Or maybe it's a $100,000 budget. How you're kind of thinking about your marketing channels and what unique sets of marketing cadences and voice by channel, and how you customize these plans is very unique. Anyone who hands you a template and says, hey, fill this out, go do it, is a bunch of BS, right? Because as you know, that template might have been created for someone who has a $30,000 budget, or maybe it's a $500 budget. And so you're not able to fully understand how to create and develop budgets templates and really understand how to build that for yourself. So I'm really excited because there's going to be a really awesome, conference that Embark is putting together. I feel very fortunate to be one of the speakers on this. The link is in the bio. And really, I would say that kind of this style of conferencing is really important. For those of you guys out there today who are listening, chances are you're in your first 18 months of business. Perhaps you are wondering, or maybe even thinking about launching, and you're like, I know that marketing is a huge component for this. Who do I need to talk to who do I need to listen to be able to really put together this marketing budget? So what I will tell you, not to steal the thunder out of the conference, but guys, going into this conference, if you already have done some research on your marketing channels, if you already have some ideas on how you're looking to express your brand into the world, you're going to get out of this conference really kind of a fantastic template of ideas. So not what to do, but how to think, right, about what to do. So a template of ideas, right? How are we kind of talking about ideas in a way that I think is going to really, in the way in which, I think you are going to be able to execute that. It's one of those things that it's one of those things that I think is extremely valuable and important is, how do you think about positioning and executing those budgets? So we have a great question here. Do I have any advice for up-and-coming designers regarding starting your brand and not breaking the bank on manufacturing? Less is more. So actually, guys, I would say DME Creations, as you are looking at kind of building and launching your brand, I would spend less money on production, more money on marketing. That means on the grand total. So not necessarily on the per unit, but on the larger totals. I'm a big fan of buying lean, and I'm a big fan of reallocating resources when it comes to investing in your marketing channels. So guys, we're going to go over this kind of stuff in more detail at the conference. But I want to give you a heads up and some insight and some things to think about. So number one, how much money do you actually have to spend? Let's get real. So we all hear about influencer marketing. Guess what? Sometimes that costs money. Sometimes it doesn't. Do you have time? Do you have resources? Come to this conference with an idea of what you actually have. I would say it's your come to Jesus moment, right? Like, what is it that I have? Like, let's be real. Let's be frank. If you don't have a lot, good to know. If you have a lot you can do, good to know as well. It's not really good or bad. It's more about a good to know, right? How do we know that you're on the right track? How do we know that we can actually do something that is productive and useful? So have your moment, right? Get real with yourself about your business. The more real you are, the better off you're going to be. So get real with your business. The next thing is I would really suggest taking a look at, resources out there in the market. So spend some time really thinking about, what are the trends in 2021? How do I want to express myself? I'm going to be going over a lot of those ideas and, kind of where I see the market heading, how I think you should be allocating your spend. But the most important thing is going to be, what are the platforms that are most attractive for you, right? So what are the ways in which you are, what are the ways in which you're kind of able to, pick your platform. People always ask me, well, Syama, what's your platform? I say, I'm a terrible writer. I'm so bad. So what do? I get on video a lot. That's my primary mechanism of doing brand awareness, is getting on videos and communicating. So I would say start to really think about, what are your platforms? What do you excel at? Are you a great graphic designer? Are you good at words? Like what are the ways in which you can fully express and support your business? And then also, who do you have access to? So who are the people who you have access to that you can actually leverage? So part of our conversation is also going to be about leverage. Like, is there leverage that you can execute? If there's no leverage, right, well, then there's no opportunity. There's no leverage, and there's really nothing to give, right? So no leverage, no money, and it's just you, and then you're going to have to be forced to gain skills, right? And luckily there are a lot of free places online where you can build your skill set. But I would say, guys, when it comes to launching a brand, I always say come correct, meaning know what your definitions of successes are, know how you want to proceed, know kind of what your limitations are, so you can then start to pivot and make the best adjustments. It's important to have the right team on staff, right? Without having the right team, you ultimately never know kind of how your hedges of successes are going to look like. So I'm fortunate to be a part of a number of different incredible teams that have seen a lot of great success over the last few years. Certainly, this year, I think one of the most exciting things that, one of the most exciting things that I think I've been able to, be a part of is, a business that went from 0 to 2 million in gross within 6 months, of this year of 2020. So when you're thinking about marketing channels, how to leverage, how to create brand creation, volume creation, sales creation, I can tell you how. It's not a matter of how do you do it. It's more a matter of, do you have the money to finance and back that? Do you have the skills and the leverage? And then ultimately, how do you take that and then kind of cross-pollinate and strategize? So those of you guys who are just joining us right now, I am Syama Maher, the CEO of Scaling Retail, which I have been at the helm of now for about 8 years, which is very, very exciting. I'm also the CEO and co-founder of a company called Rendell Co. And I'm a speaker and love to talk about things like retail and ultimately retail strategy. So whether that's looking at your business building components of financial planning through to kind of your execution on marketing and sales strategy and overseeing the departments, oftentimes clients will hire me as a co-CEO. And why is that? Because I have a very unique skill set and capability of being able to see things very 360, right? And so most of you guys out there are thinking, I want to start a brand, I need to think about marketing. I'm thinking like, okay, how do all of these pieces work together? How does your merchandising strategy match back to your marketing strategy? And how do you kind of start to build something that's very cohesive? So 360 is the way to go. If you just focus on one piece of the pie, guys, you're going to miss the entire thing. So in this particular talk that I'll be giving, I'll be going through more in-depth kind of marketing strategies, but the more that you understand of your merchandising cadence, right? How often are you producing product? What's the cadence? What's the margin planning? All of that really kind of weaves together a beautiful story, right? Which is, how does your brand go from zero to hero? How do you go from no exposure and infancy to, making millions of dollars? Like, it is all entirely possible. But what tends to be a hindrance is lack of capital resources, lack of leverage, right? And lack of time resources, right? So you need to be able to know how to leverage capital, time, and really vision, I would say. Ochil Tree Design, that 0 to 2 million story terrifies me. I'd never be able to pay for that level of production. Yeah, what's crazy is we didn't have to pay for that level of production up front, right? We were able to do that rolling. So like, initial startup costs are low, right? You kind of continue to place reorders and buys as you start to oversell and start to get reads on demand. So like, you can pay for it, especially if especially if your product is hot, right? And people want it. So there is this level of kind of designing for consumption and launching a brand for consumption that I think is very sexy and super important. We want to make sure that brands are built to be profitable. Otherwise, guys, you have a hobby, and maybe it's an expensive hobby, and that's cool. Like, I'm not trying to tell you not to have a hobby. It's just more that, I would say this kind of conference, and certainly my perspective and point of view, is really geared towards people who are interested in going from like a hobbyist to someone who's interested in really kind of taking that leap. Maybe you're not a full-fledged big company yet. Maybe it's still a business of one, but on that trajectory of kind of building towards growth. I don't believe in half-assing, right? You got a full assay. It's not a half-ass. You really got to go after it. So anyway, that is kind of my perspective and some more of what I'll be sharing about during this conference. We have an amazing lineup of speakers. Embark is doing a great job. I have a good friend of mine who's going to be also speaking. His name is Manoj Shah. He's the founder of the Brand Council, which is excellent. A lot of my clients use them, and I think that they do a great job of, leveraging kind of, again, looking after your future interests today. And I think that's what the role of a seasoned co-CEO provides for you, as well as anyone else who's on your team. It's not just about delivery today. It's about hooking up your future business self. So as you guys are interviewing potential partnerships and you're looking at who's going to be on your team for 2021, don't look at just people who are trying to wow you and impress you today, right? Look for people who are asking you the right questions. Look for people who are hooking up your future self, right? And that is ultimately where I think we all should be looking at. Stock markets are up. Things seem to be progressing well, but who knows, right? The world we're living in is also very temporal, and things are shifting and changing. So, don't get stressed out, but get hip and get wise to the fact that, knowing what the rules are in the game allows you to break them and mold them specifically to yourself. So I would say take the opportunity to understand the rules of the game. You don't have to be an expert in all of them, but you should know them, right? So part of that kind of building that knowledge bank here, I think, is definitely with this conference that I'm going to be speaking at. So, all right, guys, that is all from me. I hope you have a wonderful Monday. Feeling very optimistic and hopeful about the end of this year, about all the amazing things. Honestly, I'm hoping I might get to do some skiing this winter. I'm remaining very optimistic and hopeful about the future of a potential social life. We'll see. But otherwise, you guys can certainly find me. You can find me around on the Embark channels, on the Makers Live channels, Makers Road channels, and certainly at Scaling Retail, where I'm always waxing poetic on one of my favorite topics, which is retail. All right, guys, I will talk to you later. Have a wonderful Monday. Bye.